Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. We welcome John Palmer and Lauren Goodlett, both from Emerge Counseling Services. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Serious topic today in our community. We've had tragedy after tragedy of young people resorting to taking their own lives, and from beginning with, I think, middle school all the way through recent graduates, particularly in one school system, in Perry School System, and we can certainly be continuing to keep them all in our prayers. Let's try and talk about this a little bit. It's a tough subject. John, your affiliation with Emerge, your role there is what?
I'm the president and CEO.
And Lauren, your role there is what?
I am one of the counselors there.
And I think John brought you today because the idea of young people committing suicide is something that you have dealt with or you deal with?
Yeah, I work with a fair amount of teens who have struggled with that issue, and even some younger kids.
Younger, how young?
I think the youngest suicidal is probably about 5.
5 years old?
Yeah, it starts really young with a lot of kids.
All right, I'm sorry. I just absolutely am completely mind-boggled by that. A 5-year-old, what would be the circumstances that would cause something like that to even enter the mind of a 5-year-old?
It's kind of difficult to say, especially just with confidentiality and that kind
Sure.
of thing. But a lot of the times it's just not knowing God, not knowing the truth, and just being very discouraged. And even as they're 5 and growing up, the mind of young kids to teens is so concrete a lot of the times, and they're not able to see past their current circumstances a lot.
I kind of wanted to go that direction because that really honestly is my first question here. Does even a teenager understand the concept of eternity, that for the foreverness of a solution like suicide? It seems to me somebody who plays a lot of video games, for one thing, you get new lives. You might have a blow up, you might decide, okay, boop 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 boop, and okay, you're dead. You get 5 new lives.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in reality. Prayerfully, they have a savior. They can step into eternity with eternal life. Mm-hmm. Too many people are not prepared for eternity. And does a teenager understand that dead is dead physically here in this world? You don't get new lives here in this world. Yeah. Do they understand that?
I think that it probably depends on the teenager, but a lot of the times if the teen is that close to or in a place where they are suicidal, they probably don't, because they're in like almost a sense of crisis or trauma mode where they're not able, like I said, to see into the future. So they don't necessarily see that this is a permanent solution to what is a temporary problem, even though it may not seem like that at the time.
Is there a time period that if you can get a person, if they reach crisis, is there an amount of time that if you can just get them over that hump, that they would be able to see things more clearly?
I think that there again, it varies with every client, but there always is that hope. And sometimes that's why that hospitalization, or even just like we use like lots of safety plans, are so crucial, because it's that first however many days or hours of just keeping them safe and assuring them that there are people that care for them, and then them being able to seek out the counseling or the services or the connections with the church or other things that they might need.
Do you find that there's a pattern for teen suicide? Is it relationships falling apart? Is it trouble at home? I wouldn't think a teenager would have financial stresses, but what on earth causes a person to take that step at
Honestly,
that age?
I think it's kind of everything. Any kind of stressor for them, whether it be relationships, whether it be bullying at school. I know all the social media is, they can't escape bullying. They can't escape what's going on at school. And I feel like that could be a big contributor. But I think it depends on each child.
Depends
and
on
their
the
home
person.
life too.
Could I ask Lauren, are there certain personality traits that are more inclined toward suicidal ideation?
I'm sure there are. I think that people that are more withdrawn, people that are naturally more introverted, that are less likely to reach out. But I think a lot of it is is there a certain circumstance that's leading them to start feeling that way? Or even, is there depression? Is there some kind of mental health diagnosis that they really need to be seeking treatment for that inhibits their ability to think logically and long term?
Well, and also, what about the seriously mental illness? I mean, sometimes, and certainly that could show up in a 5-year-old, that somebody actually has some kind of chemical imbalance in their brain. How often do we see that? I would think sometimes even adolescents could exacerbate that because you've got crazy hormones going on anyway. Can you address that at all?
Yeah, I think with puberty especially, and that adolescence, that if you don't have any mental health issues or depression or extra life stressors, in and of itself, that is not a fun time.
It's rough
for
anyway.
Most people.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you add in the mental health, and a lot of the times around that age, the hormones contribute to mental health issues, so it can make it a lot worse.
Okay, let's talk about the child without mental illness, but going through adolescence and the crazy, crazy hormones. So are there some things, and we used to see sports used to help, different things that would be good for a person's self-esteem because you're getting some applause, and finding their gift and going that direction and having a auditorium or stadium full of people clapping for you, that's got to help a little bit, right?
Absolutely.
And exercise, I know that boosts the right kinds of hormones in our brains. Mm-hmm. Kids now, are they doing those kinds of things that help us get through adolescence? I know all you want to do is just get them through it, but are they doing the kinds of things for the most part? Or are we seeing more kids taking on a job and adding stress to their lives? What are we seeing?
I think that some kids are still doing those things, and even some of the kids with depression are doing those things. And you see some improvement, but not necessarily a drastic change. But a lot of kids with the depression or the suicidal ideation are so withdrawn, and they're so just like linked into or almost addicted to these devices, whether it be an iPod or a phone or some kind of social media. And that is not good because it doesn't activate the parts of your brain that help you to think logically.
Okay, something you've said a couple times now. Let's dig further into it. Social media and bullying. We have some very sophisticated tools now for bullies. There were always bullies, but they didn't have the kinds of tools that we give them today. What do we see as far as what should you be watching for as a parent to see if your child is either being bullied or is acting as a bully? What can we watch for?
I think anytime, I know teens aren't going to appreciate me saying this, but anytime a teen has social media, I feel like the parents should have full access to it. They should be able to look at it and log on at any time and really read the messages that are going on, not to be invasive, but just to protect the child, and looking for things of name calling, just putting down, mentioning negative things that may have happened at school. And kids can be really mean, and one of the scary things of social media is it's easier to be mean to somebody when you're not looking them in the face, when you're not seeing the way that it's affecting them. So that's one of the scary things about that, and kids can't really escape it short of not having social media.
How do you reason with a bully, though? I'm wondering, do you take a child out of school because then there's still access to them by social media, so you can take them away from the situation. It doesn't matter where you go. They can still be, called out worldwidely using social media and continue with the bullying. It can be horrible. Also, who wants their mommy to come into school defending them, with the principal and calling kids on the carpet? Then your life could be made even worse after that intervention is over. What's the answer?
I think that even having some more, I know there's this big anti-bullying movement, but just really being able to sit down and talk with students about the effects of bullying and how much it can hurt people, and really speaking to the bullies, finding ways for the schools and school counselors even to kind of call out the bullies in the school, because most of the time they have their own struggles going on, and that's why they're doing that. So maybe being able to get to the root of whatever is leading them to do that, because most of the time people don't really just want to hurt people unless they're really hurting themselves.
Hurting people hurt people.
Yeah.
Let me jump on something you just asked, John. Is there a personality trait that leads one to bully?
I don't know if there's necessarily a personality trait so much as, I mean, there can be in like some of the personality disorders and stuff, but you can't diagnose those in teens. But I think it's more so just whether it be their home life, whether it be their perspective, whatever it is that's causing them to really struggle. And they're going to be the toughest ones to get them to admit like that they're hurting, because they have to maintain that bully stance or that tough person stance.
Have you been able to see turnaround in your work that you do? Have you seen, certainly without giving names, but can you give us some instances of maybe someone who was causing pain to someone else, turning it around, other people who have been on the receiving end of bullying, be able to turn it around and live happy lives?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen people be able to turn it around, and teens coming from really, really horrible situations, being ripped from their homes, being placed into foster care, and different things like that, and them just being really nasty to most people. But them turning around and recognizing, like, this isn't what I want to do. This isn't how I don't want to hurt other people, but a lot of times they're just so scared, and that's the only way they know how to communicate.
We're speaking with John Palmer and Lauren Goodlett, both from Emerge Counseling Services. Are there some flags that parents should be on the lookout to be able to tell, first, if their child is being bullied, second, if they're suicidal? What should parents be on the lookout for?
I'd say a couple of different things. I think definitely just being aware of, most parents know their child's personality pretty well. So if you suddenly see this shift, or even slowly start to see that they're more withdrawn, or that they're not doing things that they wanted to do before, and they're again just looking at social media accounts, and talking with your kids openly about bullying and about depression and about suicide, just so that they know that it's okay if they're feeling that way, and that you want them to come talk to them if they start feeling sad or upset.
What do those discussions look like? Is it okay for a parent to be a little bit vulnerable and talk about how tough their own teenage years were? Because we're talking about a different era. It's hard being a kid today. And there weren't things like social media when their parents were going through these things. But their parents would know what heartbreak is like, boyfriend, girlfriend kinds of things. Is it okay? Is that the way that discussion should look? Or what should that conversation look like?
I think it's absolutely okay for parents to disclose relationships or struggles that they had in their past, understanding that as you're sharing those with the child, letting them know that I know that it's not exactly the same now. I know that there are differences, but I want you to know that I've struggled, that other people out there are struggling and have overcome it. And there again, that's where a lot of the times counseling can be really, really helpful for teens, especially because not many teens really want to talk to their parents about all the deep stuff. And that's okay. That's why there's so many counselors out there that are more than willing to. But I still encourage parents to talk about it, even though it's not a fun topic to talk about.
No. Here, mine for the suggestion box is being a mom of boys. And yeah, they tend to withdraw their boys, their teenage boys. They're going to stop using the English language and start grunting only from about 14 till about maybe 18, and then they're back. They're back. But take up golf. Because where you can't say to a young boy, sit down here, I want to talk to you for 2 hours about everything going on in your life. That's not going to get you anywhere. But you can say, hey, let's go play 9 holes. And on the golf course, a young man will open up, yes, even to his mother. And you've just, it's just a natural give and take, and you find out what's going on in their lives. There's one for the suggestion box.
Yeah, because they feel safe.
Absolutely.
It's in a non-threatening environment, and they really do feel safe. About 5 years ago, we had a young boy come to Emerge he was being bullied, and his parents saw this sudden shift in his attitude and in his demeanor, and so they brought him to us, and our psychologist at the time shared this story with me, of course, without knowing who the family is or the boy. He came into her office, and she was talking with him, and he didn't want to talk. She said, "Why don't you come with me?" So they went to the expressive therapy room. We call it the play therapy room, and we use sandbox therapy for some of our clients. And she said, "I want you to make your world for me." And so on the shelves were all sorts of things he could choose from. And so he picked a little boy and he put him in the sandbox. And then he surrounded that boy with large animals, lion, tiger, elephant, buffalo, the large animals. And then he started taking those animals and they started attacking the boy, and he started grunting, and when he really got into it, there was a war going on there. And after a few minutes, he stopped. She said, "What is that?" And he said, "Well, that's me on the playground."
Wow.
And he said, and he couldn't use the word. He didn't know the word bullying. He didn't use it, and he had been so traumatized by the event and had been threatened by the boys. If you say anything, it'll be worse.
Right.
That he didn't even have language, but because play is the language of children, in that context, he was able to go deep into his soul and share what was happening. And of course, she was then able to work with the parents in the school, and they were able to remedy that situation, thankfully. And after several counseling sessions, she said he came back to being the happy-go-lucky boy that he had been before. So I really want to encourage parents, if there are these situations, reach out for help, perhaps to a clergy member, a youth pastor, perhaps a counselor, a psychologist, someone, a trusted friend, but someone that you can open up to and share, and that person who's hurting can share with as well in a place where they know is really, really safe.
Great thoughts. We'll be back with John Palmer and Lauren Goodlett after these words. You're listening to Our Community.